Somebody help me. I have so many books that were already here, okay? These aren't even the books that I purchased recently, but they're books that are calling to me on some level, you know? Books that from their places on the shelf are going, pick me, pick me. And I can't seem to narrow it down, okay? I can't seem to narrow it down. So, with the help of, I don't know what we're going to name him. I think we're going to name him something like Finn. But look at what I just got at the thrift store the other day. It's a big old turtle. It's a turtle pillow. And he was like, really in good, like, he was in good condition, you know? Like, oh, he's so huge. Finn is so huge. Look, he's even got a little turtle tail. But he was so cute. I mean, like, at a store, this would be, I don't know, probably $30, you know? But anyways, I just love him. We like had to take turns laying on him in the house because we all love him so much. So with the help of whatever his name's gonna be, turtle guy. Let's turn him around so he can see the books. There you go. I'm gonna go over some books that I have right here. If I can leave links below, I will, if you're interested, but, you know, no pressure or whatever. Okay, so first, it was a couple months ago, I did actually read this on, like, an ebook, so technically I've already read it, but having the physical copy of The Beauty and the Beast by, now this is the real version, Madame de... Okay, I have to remember my French class, okay? Villeneuve. No, that's U-V-E. So that's Uve. Villeneuve. Something like that. Madame de Villeneuve wrote this like in the 19th century. 18th century, sorry. Published in 1740. This is the original, obviously translated edition of Beauty and the Beast. And as that wasn't even my favorite Disney, I was more into the, well, like when I was an adolescent, I got more into like Grimm fairy tales and Hans Christian Andersen and almost like the real takes, like the more darker takes of the fairy tales. And I am fascinated by fairy tales in general. The like what role they play. They do have a role in terms of establishing morals and values. And I love, even if they don't have an underlying moral, you know, like less life lesson, like this, even though I guess I would argue that this does have an underlying moral, okay? And this particular French original version of Beauty and the Beast is really pretty different. It was pretty... I read my ebook all the way through, and this is... Ooh, excuse me. This is how I studied. This is how I study in general, okay? It's just always been how I study. It's how I teach my kids to study. You read something like a text, like a chapter, if you're going through a chapter for a class, read the entire thing back to back, okay? Cover to cover. Then you go through and you skim it, just, you know, not really thinking. And then you go to, I read like the first couple of paragraphs and then the last couple of paragraphs. And then I read the whole thing again. So that's how I do most of my reference material. It's how I study. But because this one was so small and because I needed to get out of my original Disney framework for this text, like I've got a million versions of Beauty and the Beast Disney, like in terms of kids books that, you know, have more or less detail in them. But anyways, I knew I needed to get out of the Disney with this, but it ended up being holy shit fantastical. Okay. I kept going back to certain things. The visualizations that I was getting with this was profound. there was a point in here that they talked about this like frozen landscape of the castle, okay, because everything's actually frozen for the first part of this. And you guys, I was thinking about tarot. And the wording used to write this was immaculate, okay? Now, on a side note, I want everyone who has YouTube Premium or YouTube Movies to go and watch the Beauty and the Beast French version. It is in French. And I don't mind it when it's like subtitled in English. Or I think this is like, what is it called? Subbed or dubbed? It's speaking like you hear English, but they're not talking in English. They're talking in French, okay? And the atmosphere in this movie, you got... Woo! Mm-mm. And there is nothing like it in terms of fairy tale imagery, okay? So I'm going to leave that link below. Hopefully, if you're interested in watching a Beauty and the Beast movie, that will spark some shit in you guys. So anyways, I'm rambling. 6 minutes in, we only been talking about one book. Okay, then, I'll talk about this one. Actually, I'll talk about this one first. I picked this up at the Goodwill, and it's called Shadowmarch by Tad Williams. It's obviously pretty old. I love old fantasy books that I can get from the thrift store. This is a chunky monkey, but I love these. I read an entire 13-book series called Wizard's First Rule. It's an entire series by Terry Goodkind, and he's a fantastic writer. It's slow to get into, but I ended up reading all 13 of those books. There's more that come out now. So I ended up picking up at the thrift store, knew nothing about the series, right? So I like to kind of get my hands on fantasy novels, but older, not the new stuff that's coming out, because I don't really like the synopsis of those. But I liked the synopsis of this. Plus, while I read the synopsis of this, take a look at this beautiful castle. That is probably a goal that I've had in life since I was a child, is to have a castle. So, the castle spoke to me. I'm like in shadow here, but, so, for generations, the misty shadow line has marked the boundary between the lands of man and the lost northern lands that are the lair of their inhuman enemies, the ageless Quar. But now that boundary line is moving outward, threatening to engulf the northernmost land in which humans still live, the kingdom of Southmarch. For centuries, the Eden family has ruled an ancient, forbidding Southmarch castle, guarding the border against the Tsar return. But now, this powerful royal line has been dealt a devastating blow. The monarch is being held captive in a distant land, and it falls to his inexperienced heirs to lead their people in time of growing danger and dread. It is on the two youngest Edens that the heaviest burdens fall. The twins, Beric and Bryony, who in such evil times have only each other, may lose even that bond as darkness closes over them. As the Tsar's power reaches out across the land, will Southmarch Castle, the only home they've ever known, become in fact what it has long been called, Shadowmarch. Now, here's an interesting tip about linen. Forgive my third person there. I am fascinated with twin stories. I've always been obsessed with balance, with the dichotomy of good versus evil, and I've been obsessed with Cain and Abel since I was a kid. This whole, the one's evil, one's good type of a relationship that twins have in terms of mythology and things. So the fact that this was about twin brothers and they've got to battle this evil that's on the borders. There's something about borders with me too, like hedges, borders, boundaries that you either see through magic or they're actually there. Like the book Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I love it. Okay. I love stuff like that. So even though this is chunky, I'm already envisioning that this is going to be a slow burn, like a slow, leisurely read, something you read on the toilet. This is kind of the books you read on the toilet, You set it behind you. And then every time you go in there, you read a little bit of it. You know, that's how slow books like this end up being. But I'm hoping that with how engaging the synopsis was, that it'll be actually engaging. And I'm curious about this castle. A lot of old like 80s, 90s fantasy writers world build in a way that I like and appreciate. So that's a novel that I'm planning on reading. And I was inspired recently by Owlvine. She did a vlog. Shireen did a vlog on her channel and mentioned Charles de Lint. I keep hearing that name. I keep hearing it. Now, the book that I actually have written down in a journal, Charles de Lint, Dreams Underfoot, which is another one of his novels. And that I was like, I wanted to read. And then Owlvine, talked about this book, Memory and Dream, which is about like art and painting. And I was like, I'm an artist. I like books that go into that realm, how they describe paints and canvas and art supplies and how it moves. It's really, you'd think it would be easy to describe that kind of stuff, but if you're not an artist, and I'm an artist, like I use paints, I use a palette, I use paintbrushes, right? And it's still hard. It would still be hard for me to like describe what I'm doing in terms of a novel. So I'm always interested in how they play that out. And I already knew that Charles de Lint was one of those authors that I wanted to try out. So I ended up acquiring Memory and Dream, this lovely antique edition, or not antique. It's actually technically antique. I actually love every single book that I've read that's by the Tor Fantasy Publishing Company. So whenever you're in the thrift store and you see Tor, like, and I think Glastonbury Tor when I think of that, but it may not be that. But every book that I've read by this publishing company is really, really good. So there's another novel. After Beauty and the Beast, I became obsessed with werewolves again. But in a more, what do you want to say? Non-fantasy way. That's what I want to say. Like, you know, I could go off my favorite book, which is Blood and Chocolate. That was my favorite childhood book ever. I read it 1,000 times. Anyways, but after this, the whole beast, I'm telling you guys, having a beast in a story, whether or not he transforms back, it's just about the beast journey, I am obsessed with. So, I picked up Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. And Hermann Hesse is one of those authors that reminds me a little, if you're familiar with my channel at all, his writing style reminds me a little of Leila. He's cheeky as fuck. He's one of those men like Bukowski, like Milo Ticket, that I want to have dinner with. Like, let's have dinner. And you just sit there and smoke your cigar and we'll chat. You know? Like, I just feel like these kinds of conversations with these type of men, I mean, look at his picture. Kind of creepy, but kind of like, you know some shit. Your brain's doing some stuff. And I want to hear what it is. So, he's always been one of those authors for me that's kind of cheeky and, you know, maybe his German blood. But anyway, Steppenwolf, I'll read the back to you. With its blend, and this is supposed to be, like, I guess wolf fur, even though I can't really tell which part of the body it is. Yeah, I can't tell. With its blend of Eastern mysticism, and Western culture, Hesse's best known and most autobiographical work is one of literature's most poetic evocations of the soul's journey to liberation. Harry Howler is a sad and lonely figure, a reclusive intellectual for whom life holds no joy. He struggles to reconcile the wild primeval wolf and the rational man within himself without surrendering to the bourgeoisie values he despises. His life changes dramatically when he meets a woman who is his opposite, the carefree and elusive Hermann. The tale of the Steppenwolf culminates in the surreal magical theater for madmen only. Doesn't it just... I don't even know. I don't know what this is going to do to me, but I know that this book is going to change my life. As someone who's been obsessed with werewolves, inner wolves, the story of that you have wolves inside of you and it's the one that you feed. That's the one that's going to take over. I think that's actually Native American, but my parents told me that story since I was a child. I've always been obsessed with the beast within, right? Probably why I like the Thoth Tarot. You know, it's like lust is in the middle of the major arcana, right? It's not about lust, it's about the beast within, you know. What did he call it? The wild primeval wolf, right? So, this book is going to change my life. And I'm kind of scared, you know, I'm kind of scared to start. So, let's see. I got some reference materials, but this is my last novel. Okay, so back a couple of summers ago, I read Dion Fortune's, I'm pointing over here, you can't see it, but isn't it close by? I feel like it's close by. Yeah, here she is. Oh my goodness. I read The Sea Priestess by Dion Fortune. Isn't this the best cover of a book you've ever seen? So, anyway, I love Dion Fortune's writing style. And I thought, we're going to go into a little controversy. I thought that I read Moon Magic, but I guess I haven't, because I read the back and I felt nothing. So I was like, okay, I have not read this. So I'm going to read the back of this. It's the last novel I'll talk about. Moon Magic by Dion Fortune. Isn't this like vintage copy divine? Okay. Dion Fortune is now... Okay, this is her biography. Let's get to the actual synopsis of this. Okay. Moon Magic sees the return of Dion Fortune's famous heroine, Morgan Le Fay, this time in the form of Lilith, priestess of the great goddess of nature. Now, fully in control of her spiritual powers, she establishes an astral temple and begins her magical work. Through telepathy, she contacts Malcolm, an unhappy and rather eccentric physician, and they begin working rituals together as priest and priestess of Isis. But Malcolm falls in love with Lilith, and she begins to feed on his love. So maybe she's going the succubus way. Sucking off its vigor to keep herself young. She felt compelled to write Moon Magic after the success of Sea Priestess, a classic work on the principles of anima and animus, where it makes an intriguing study into human and superhuman relationships. So, that's cool. Now, on to Morgan Le Fay and controversy. You guys. So, The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. There you go. I knew I had it. Was one of those books starting out in the craft. It was one of those books that started in that when I read it and I was starting in the craft, it influenced me in such powerful ways. Okay. But since the accusations on her about her daughter have come about, I've yet to pick the book up again and read it. There's just something about, it's almost like the magic died. The magic of that book died once the accusations came about from the daughter. Pretty horrific accusations. What this accusation came about did was it made me not want to pick the book up again. Even though it was such a powerful ass book for me in terms of my craft and beginning the craft. I may end up picking it back up. I guess wanted to put my 2 cents on that I get weird feelings when stuff like this is said about controversies and separating art from artists and things like that. I've always been pretty good about doing that. But the reality is I haven't picked the book back up off my shelf. My point is that Moon Magic seems like a book that could replace that in terms of magic, in terms of Morgan Le Fay magic. Now, I don't know if Dion Fortune is going to go into Avalon, priestesshood. It does say priest and priestess work like through Isis, but I don't know if it's going to go into like Arthurian type of a legend. Not that it needs to replace Mists of Avalon, but if it holds that sort of like prose type of wording, then this could replace that. And just because of it being Morgan Le Fay, you know, so there you go. Okay, on to the resource materials, which are what I consider learning materials. The one I'm reading right now, like sitting on the couch while the kiddies are on the TV in the evening, I like thumb through this. It's called Earth Walking Sky Dancers. Williams. Woman's Pilgrimages to Sacred Places. And it's by Leila Castle. And there's something, I don't know, there's something powerful about this so far. Even though it's women's pilgrimages, it's just because it's women that are going on the pilgrimages. Now, how this is laid out is there's a big piece of the book is the introduction, which is Leila Castle's story, but then the rest of the chapters are laid out from other people's pilgrimages. So a woman went on a pilgrimage to a sacred place and wrote about it for a chapter of this book. So Monica Suge, the author of The Great Cosmic Mother, which was a book that I read years and years ago. I don't actually have a copy of it anymore. Jessica Potter was one of the ones that went on a pilgrimage. She actually is the artist of the original Greenwood Tarot. And a couple more that I didn't recognize right off the bat. But those are just to name a few. Pictures in here. And all on these women's relationship to these pilgrimages, how they went about it, a little on their life stories. And it feels really, even though it's kind of outdated from its hatred on the patriarchy, okay, because that was all the rage in the 80s when this was published, is women's studies and hating on the patriarchy and shit. So there's a lot of like, you know, that kind of bashing in this so far already. So it's outdated in that regard, but in terms of the pilgrimages and the actual sacred sites that are still around, still sacred, still hold a lot of magic, this is pretty powerful. So I'm loving it. Now, back in December, how do I want to say this? When I chose, or when the word chose me, the word of the year essence chose me, I went on a quest to find a specific guru. Okay, and I'm using that because I don't have another term for that. A book. Missy is scratching at the door. She always knocks when she wants to come back in. Just like one book that will get me through the year in terms of my relationship with the word essence. And I think I chose a really good book. So, it is Deepak Chopra, Metahuman. Let's put this in. Unleashing Your Infinite Potential. A little side note. Another side note about me. I do not, almost flat out refuse to read self-help books. If they are classified self-help, I will not read it. Because it's someone else's journey with self-help, not my particular journey. And I almost rebel against anything in this self-help category. I've always been like that. But for some reason, this particular book called to me. Okay? I'm going to read a little bit of the back. Let's hold this up like this. Metahuman invites the reader to walk the path here and now. Waking up isn't just about mindfulness or meditation. To become metahuman is to expand our consciousness in all that we think, say, and do. By going beyond, we can liberate ourselves from the conditioning and constructs that underlie anxiety, tension, and ego-driven demands. Waking up allows life to make sense as never before. Now, there is a 31-day guide to become metahuman in the, like, back of the book. I'm not going to do that. But I like books like this that will talk about self-help in generalized terms. It's kind of like reading a horoscope out of a newspaper. It will make sense to every Aquarian because it's generalized, right? And every Aquarian can pull something from it. So I like that. I like when self-help books do that. But the main thing that I focused in on was expanding your consciousness through what we say, think, and do. And those are things that I concentrate on when working with my own psyche and things like that. So that kind of spoke to me. So I'm hoping that this will end up being a powerful book for me. I can already tell you it's not going to put me on a self-help path because that's not a thing for me. I will help myself. I know that probably sounds silly, but it's like my first and probably my only self-help book. Hopefully this will, hopefully at the end of this, I will be metahuman. Okay. All right. You guys, I was on the hunt for an Alchemy Oracle deck that wasn't Robert in place. Okay. And that really spoke of alchemy and transformation in more of a magical way. And I mean not esoteric way, but in a more magic, okay? Energy and swirls, right? And like inner transformation and things like that. There is like something specific I was looking for. And I found it. But it was not a deck. It was a website that had this woman's art on it. Like a big, I'll leave it below. It's like a big page with all of her artworks. And you click Oracle. It's a button, like an old-timey button, old-timey website. And you hit the button and it conjures one of those images for you. And then it gives a little blurb as to what the image is. Now this particular person, this creator, I don't know why, but she didn't make a deck. She could have made a deck and sold it, and I would have bought the damn thing. Because I think there were like 56 images on this website. And I kept going back to the website, right? So then I went on a quest. I was like, okay, this lady has to have some kind of deck or book or something that and she did. A book. Carolyn Mary Kleefeld, The Alchemy of Possibility. I mean, look at that art. Can't really see it because of my ring light, but I'll show you an example. She's got, it's nudity, never mind. I'm not going to show that. Okay. Here's a painting, right? Which is one of the images that you can get on the website. And then it says embracing change. It's a whole chapter devoted to this. But then on this side, she's got the I Ching and a corresponding tarot card on like this little blurb here. And really goes into detail about how the painting was molded, how it came about, visions that this painter has that allowed the painting to come forth, and then how alchemy was like the result. So it's like by painting all of these 56 images, at the end of that, she was transformed. And then she went back and dove into the alchemy of all that. It was so profound, you guys. And then a poem rounds out each of the chapters with each of the paintings. I mean, look at that. So, really, really profound book. I use this for inspiration in my own art and to read up on alchemy. And she's got a whole chapter on blame. And like the colors that she used for some of the images, plus some of the explanations were just, that's profound in itself. That's alchemy in and of itself, is color like black, orange, green, and yellow. And then the tarot card for blame is the devil. So that would be like her devil card, right? Super disappointed that there's not an oracle deck by Carolyn Kleefeld, but maybe one day. Maybe I'll write her and talk her into it. So, but fantastic book. And then this has been on my bookshelf forever, okay? And it's Anthropology. You guys know, if you're familiar with my channel, that I love Anthropology. Magic, Witchcraft, and Religion, an Anthropological Study of the Supernatural. Look at that painting. I love it. I love it so much. And it's mapped out like a textbook, which I'm cool with. I think there are exercises. Yeah, there's exercises. There's tables in the back, case studies for each chapter. Good references, like in the back of every chapter. In the back of every chapter, instead of just in the back of the book, there's actually a reference guide, which is killer in you need that in reference materials, okay? And the way it's mapped out, it actually makes me think that this was used in schools in some kind of metaphysical type of a study, right? So I'll read the back. Magic, Witchcraft, and Religion, as the title, takes us into the realm of religious beliefs and practices, both strange and familiar. Demons, witches and ghosts, drugs, divination, and the occult, Jonestown, and the Moonies are all discussed from an anthropological perspective. This fascinating anthology of readings ranges from traditional to non-traditional themes and includes tribal anthropological studies and modern world accounts, with numerous examples from American culture. This will be epic, you guys. So, for a 400-page book, textbook, this will be profound for me. So, I actually pulled this out of the dusty bookshelf to dive into this year. And then last was a recent acquisition, but when it arrived, I immediately put it up. It was like I was not ready to dive into it, okay? But I know that this year will be the year as I'm diving into the essence, diving into the core of me, diving into alchemy and how to be metahuman. I know that I want to establish a relationship with Mary Magdalene. I have been obsessed with Mary Magdalene and the Knights Templar for years. It really started with the Knights Templar. You know, even before Dan Brown came on the scene, I was obsessed with the Knights Templar and their philosophy and morals and values and things like that. And they were above the law, right? And things like that. And they discovered the first bank system. So they're just fascinating. And they kind of do tie into the Magdalene, right? But this particular book was in my cart. Like, it's been in my cart for probably years. Just like, you know, in the save for later on Amazon for years. I just never knew if I wanted to, like, have it, right? And I just did the plunge. And it's The Left-Hand Path of the Feminine Christ. You guys, somebody tell me if you've been reading this. I know that this is probably going to be one of those books, like some of these, that are going to be so profound in my journey. So, I think they go into some of the history of the Magdalene. Let's see. Rose Pilgrims. Interesting. Lineage, her lifetime, and her legacy. Yes. One thing that stuck with me is called Lineage. She's the dragon priestess. I am also a dragon priestess. Probably not in a Magdalene way. But I am fascinated to read that little piece of it. Because I am a dragon witch. I do work with dragons. So it's fascinating to see all types of culture relations when in terms of the dragon, and how I could sift through that, and maybe it may inspire some new things to come about in terms of like my witchcraft, and inspire new nuggets that will evolve my craft and my practice. So I'm excited for that. Ooh, big truck. I'm excited for that to inspire me. Okay, that was all. That's not all the books that I'm I have some that I'm reading on the Kindle right now, but these are the ones that I wanted to share, because these are the ones that I can't seem to pick which one I'm diving into, except for this one, which I'm currently reading. So help me out. If you've read any of these books, I will leave a whole list of the books down below in the resource section. If I can't find links, there'll still be a list of the ones that I listed here. And if you've read any of them, let me know your thoughts on them, please. Me and Finn baby need some help. So much love, people.